Hey there, welcome to another live. I'm Sheila Botelho, and I am really excited to share with you someone who I interviewed on today's episode of the Connect with Sheila Botelho podcast. Her name is Moller. She is an actor, a singer, and a creative muse. And we had such an amazing conversation that I love to continue these things once the episodes have dropped on Instagram Live. So thank you so much for being here. Hello, the Fit Creative. You're the first to join. I love what you put out on social media. So inspiring and something to work towards. You have some amazing moves, I've got to say. And I'm very thrilled that we get to do these because especially during this time where a lot of people are feeling disconnected, you know, at least we have technology, right? To keep us together. And it really requires us being intentional though too. But I gotta say, I'm really thrilled because if you see, there's sun. I'm actually in the sunlight today. And we've really been wanting some sun up here in the Canadian North. And I'm sure where Anne is from, hi Anne, if you wanna just hit request to join, I will add you. She's in Maine and here we go. I'm gonna add her. She's looking forward to some sun and warmer temperatures as well. So we're waiting for her to join us. This is thrilling. Hello, Anne.
Hi.
So good to see you.
So great to see you.
I literally just got back from tobogganing with my son, although I wasn't tobogganing because I didn't want to wreck my phone before our call.
Yeah, right.
Although it was tempting.
I bet. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was so good. And so you guys can all check it out on my stories. He was snowboarding on his toboggan. This kid's never been snowboarding before, but he's, I think, going to be a natural when we finally get to a snow hill, when they finally open. Hello, Sarah, Kate's mom. And hello, Agnes, everybody joining us. And Jane, oh my goodness. So wonderful. See, we all need this connection. It's Wednesday, and I feel like Wednesday is a day during the week that is like one of ultimate visibility. For some reason, it's like we build to it and then we decline a little bit and we go into rest for the weekend. It's like yet one more cycle in season, right?
Yeah.
So you're in Maine right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weather like where you are?
We actually had snow. It was so weird because yesterday last night when I went out to do my grounding at around sunset, the snow had melted and I could see, the grass, and then overnight the snow is all covered. I mean, the ground is all covered with snow again. It's not deep, but it's covered.
Yeah, we got a good 10, 15 centimeters yesterday, something like that. That would be, what's the translation to inches? I was just doing this with my son. I don't know. It's, it's just, it's like about that much. So
okay, yeah, I think
it's kind of like baking.
I actually haven't been outside yet, so I'm not quite sure, but I think we have about half that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's
well, you look great. I love your hair like that.
Oh,
it's
thank
so
you.
Pretty. Yeah.
Thanks. So do you? I like. Do you? Is it always straight? I feel like sometimes it's wavy and sometimes it's straight.
Okay, so naturally, if I do nothing, it's wavy that turns to frizz. So, you got to use the product. But then I often will straighten it and then I'll end the week curling it because then that's easier to maintain and then I'll repeat. So it's just whatever I'm up to. And today it was just under a hat. So frankly, I'm like, you know what? I'll just whip it out and brush it. And actually, what's so exciting? Right before this, I got an email from my podcast host saying that this was my 50th episode. Ooh. It's actually episode 49, but when you add the trailer, it's the 50th actual episode. So congratulations, Anne. You made it onto the 50th episode.
50 is a great number.
It is a great number. Yeah, I'm thrilled. And, when we were on the podcast, and I'm hoping everyone goes on over and listens to it, you can listen at any podcast host of choice, like a podcast player. If you go to sheilabotelho.com/podcast, you'll see it there. And Anne's episode is actually listed as episode 49. Mm-hmm. And we talked about, what led you into acting and music. And what I want to know, we talked about your whole trajectory that brought you to where you are. And I mean, we could have talked for so much more time because you've had such a wonderful, varied experience.
Oh, thanks.
And my goodness, living in New York City, this small town girl who, you know, I've lived in Toronto, but let's face it, I was working corporately, so I didn't really see Toronto. I was at a desk. So this small town girl from rural Ottawa was like, ooh, NYC life. Tell me more.
Yeah, totally.
I would love to know, what is a stage show in New York that you would love to perform in? And would it be acting or singing or both?
Oh gosh.
Like a dream role.
I mean, I honestly can't think of one in a current show. I mean, there are no current shows. They're, you know, all on hold, but you know,
yes.
Before the world fell apart. But I would say, if my voice, if I can get my soprano back to where it used to be, I would love to play Lily in The Secret Garden. That was the very first professional musical I ever saw. And it just, I think maybe we even talked about it in the podcast because it's like one of those key moments for me. And it's just, she has these gorgeous, haunting songs. And then also I really love Miss Honey in Matilda. She sings this beautiful song called This Little Girl. And it's just, those are some that, and then in non-musicals, oh, I also have honestly always wanted to play Audrey in Little Shop, which is kind of against type for me, but I love playing against type. And then for non-musicals, or we call them straight shows in the theater, as you may know, when I'm a little older, I want to play Blanche in Streetcar.
Oh, yes. Oh, so many good shows to see. Yeah. And like you say, these are classics. And your first one that came to mind, it's really no surprise to me because you grew up playing fairies in the forest with your sister at the behest of your amazing mom and aunts and, you know, elders, which is like, I love that so much. And so it's not surprising that that's the one you would, it comes so naturally, right?
Yeah. Oh. Like the enchantment of the flowers and the whole,
Oh, yeah. And I mean, really, this is something I think that we can intentionally recapture in our lives as adults, but it's unfortunate that so many children, even at a younger and younger age, are leaving behind these fantasies and things of childhood. And really, a lot of it is connected to being connected to the nature, to other people, to miracles happening, to beautiful things in life. And then we just kind of go down the trajectory of, well, you know, life is serious and bad stuff happens. And well, yes, that may be true, but if we can reconnect ourselves to these kind of magical moments and we are focused intentionally for doing that, we see them everywhere.
Yeah.
And we can't lose that just because we're adults, these big, serious adults. My goodness. I hope we can all stay connected to that youthful spark. And certainly having kids helps. I know you've got nieces and, you know, doesn't that just take you back? Like it's
they're
so stunning.
I was preparing something that involved music that somebody sent to me recently. And I was also babysitting my nieces and I was listening to this song that for me was actually quite poignant. And then Ruby, who's 2.5, like sort of bolts into the room wearing a purple fairy outfit and starts dancing around to the song. And I was like, and now it's a completely different moment, which I appreciated. I mean, actually made me cry more, but it was just like, yeah, it's beautiful. And I mean, honestly, it's interesting. It occurs to me as you're speaking that I'm sort of a little oddly rebellious about that, I think, in that I don't like this. Of course, I, you know, believe in taking care of our responsibilities and having integrity as adults, but I also, this sort of thing of like, just becoming serious and letting things be dry and boring. I'm like, no, I'm just a no to that, you know? So, you know, I'm like, if it means that I need to take a little longer to, you know, for my commute so I can literally stop and smell the roses, which I do sometimes. I lived in London for several months a number of years ago, and there are so many roses in people's gardens by by the sidewalk, and I would take forever to get down the block because they all smell so good. And it reminds me of this friend of mine. We were having a drive in the car for this road trip, and she was talking about partnership, and I said, what are you looking for? And she listed a bunch of qualities, and one of them was a sense of wonder.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's so crucial.
Yes, so much so. And isn't that what flowers are there for? Not just to see them, although if we really see them, it's not like a quick glance. We want to like, oh, they're nature's art and nature's scent. And yes, we need to stop. So really, it is this whole slowing down in our lives enough and getting rid of things that really are not important and setting boundaries with like even fabulous technology. Yeah. So that we can create more space to do those things. And yeah, I was the kid who was hugging trees on the way to school. Totally. I still, and then later on I learned about Zach Bush and, breathing your microbiome and like hugging trees. I'm like, oh, see, I always knew. Like we knew this stuff is innate for us. And I love that my kids love that. They hang out in the forest and build forts down the street with their friends, even though we're in like a subdivision type area. They find ways to seek that stuff out in their kind of masculine, teenage way, But yes, if we can hold on to that wonder, it's so important. And I think, yes, power to the rebellious, heart open, enjoyment seekers. Like I think we need more of that. And that is what creative people bring to the world. Like we have our very extremely analytical people and boundaried people that help keep the world running, and we need that. And hopefully there's all that spectrum that they have that playfulness. But if we can have that sense of wonder instilled in art and TV and film and all of that, like it really does, like that supports us. Imagine the world without music, without art, without I don't want to go there. Like get up in the morning and it's quiet while I do my yoga, and then music is on all day, and it's various genres, every genre. And if it's not on, it feels like, oh, I'm bored. Life sucks, So I have to have that connection. And now I have to know this. Is there always a song playing in your head most of the time?
Well, that's a really good question. A lot of the time. I mean, I also am like you. I do listen to music most of the day, and I have different types depending on, my mood and what I'm doing or whatever. I guess when I'm not listening to music, yeah, sometimes there's a song going through my head. I mean, certainly when I have long stretches of silence, like for example, I don't know, say I'm like at a retreat where there's no technology, it's pretty likely that I'll be eventually singing because it just feels very necessary.
We need to fill that void.
Yeah.
We need it.
I mean, silence is beautiful also. But yeah, is there? Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, actually, there's one in my head right now because of like something I was listening to while I was getting ready. So.
Absolutely. Oh, it's just so fun, right? And so, yeah, hopefully we can keep rebelling in that way. I think it's a beautiful rebellion, and it really speaks to how we all have different roles. And, you share on the podcast your experience of being an editorial assistant, I believe it was, at Random House, and how that all went. And there was a reason for that. Your heart and your abilities were meant to be worked out in a different way, in a creative entrepreneurial space, like a maker space. And I resonate with that. Having the autonomy to do the things that you feel led to do. Every day looks a little different. I'm curious about this. I find with myself, I like structure, and yet I like every day being different a little bit. Like, do you balance between those two?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm actually literally in the middle of sort of an overhaul of how I relate to my calendar and structure and scheduling because, when I was back in New York, I sort of had a loose structure that had to do with, going to certain exercise classes in the mornings and some days of the week going to my acting classes, whatever, various things. And because I'm in a different phase, I am needing a little more structure. Yeah, I feel like it varies. And for me, it's like maybe having some routine, like for example, you know, getting up, feeding the cats, making my breakfast and coffee, you know, and then maybe like some days I might go straight outside for a little fresh air, or some days I might sit and, you know, journal. And I mean, you know, some days if I'm in a rush, I skip those things and I just like, you know, read the script that I'm working on or whatever. But I guess having like a few sort of anchor points in the day is helpful for me. And then to have some fluidity within that is good. But also, you know, the other thing is I feel like with creativity, I think we sort of have this idea that we need to wait for inspiration to strike.
Yeah.
And my experience is sometimes that is true. And then other times there's something to be said for just showing up consistently, because that helps sort of prime the pump, you know, and not necessarily needing to feel super inspired every time that I show up to write or every time that I show up to work on a scene or whatever, because eventually it shows up.
That's always been the case with me as well. Oh yeah. And knowing that and then actually doing it is, oh my goodness. It's like I find I rebel against my schedule sometimes. I'll say, I'm going to do this, 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 this. And I look at it, great. So I'm going to go do this thing that's really not important. Or that is important, but it's not on the list. Okay, why did I bother with the list? And then eventually I get to that. And sometimes rushing, I don't know, it's like I feed on adrenaline for creativity sometimes. So, and every time I just sit down and like, okay, I create my own deadlines, but I'm like, okay, I need to do this. I said I was going to do this by this time. Boom. And it happens and it's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, I could have also done that Monday at 11 a.m. And, you know, like,
it's like a whole thing.
It is. But the awareness is cool. And, you know, so I'm 48 and like, you know, we're getting there. Maybe by 50, I'll have it figured out. Because they say you get wiser. I don't know. I still feel like 19. Often act like it too. And, you know, we talk about rebelling and fun, like home educating my kids all these years. My son's just in the first, he's just writing, I think he just finished writing his last business exam it's actually a grade 10 course he did in grade 9. And then he's off until they start at the beginning of February. But I remember like teaching them things that could be really dry. I would try and make them fun. I wouldn't even try. We'd just have fun with it. And as a result, certain subjects that would normally be really dry, they got good at because it was fun, you know, and just playing with it. And my youngest son, the snowboarding toboggan guy, there's always, it doesn't matter what it is. If he can turn it into a joke, if he can, you know, have some farcical comedy, like that's just him, or a little bit of sarcasm. But underneath that is like a lot of heart and care and tenderness. And I'm just like, oh, the older one's very, very competitive. So they balance each other really well. And it creates a really neat energy in our home. And so, and my husband's more the analytical. Okay. He's super funny guy though. Like he's an accountant by trade who's now working actually in film and TV, working on constructing sets. Yeah, so which is really neat. It's just he's like, I want to try this. I want to see how this goes. And he's got this space and freedom to be able to do that. So he is. But so this combination of we all kind of flow together. Like I've gotten more structured and analytical. He's gotten more playful. Right. And I think that's the beauty of all these different personalities bouncing off of each other. Yeah. So now what would you like to see adapted into a stage performance or a film? Like something that you've read, something you've heard about? I'd love to know.
That's a really great question. There's actually a book that I had in mind for that for a long time, but in this very moment, I can't remember the name of it. And it is by... Maybe we can post it later, but there's this author, there's this Southern woman, like American Southern woman, who writes books like magical realism. and they're sort of, I would say it's sort of like a romantic comedy in a book, but with like, I'm sure she's done a bunch of different books, but there's sort of 2 or 3 that are following this thread of this family of women that all have magical powers that are related to like cooking and plants. And also some of it, you know, veers into like the sensual realm. And anyway, they're really cool. And I just can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, let me know later and I'll post
like
it below.
Peach something, or I think we might even have one of the books here somewhere. So yeah, I will let you know, but it's the first one of those. Even as I was reading it, I just thought, oh, this imagery is so delicious, and it could be done so beautifully in like a performative way. And also the relationships are like really fun. So, and then like the main character kind of goes through this whole emotional arc, you know, this growth process. So yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind.
That's so great. Yeah, it's fun I find often I'll read a book and say, oh, this needs to be a movie. And then I realize, and that's great. And then I realize my mind, I don't know, would it ever really, you know, match up with what's in my mind, right? Like often reading, there is something spectacular about that, right? So it's neat when they actually get it right. Kind of like the Outlander series, right? I only read the first one because it was so thick and my kids were babies and I'm like, I gotta go to bed. But I love, like, they've done a beautiful job, and it speaks to my heart because my maiden name is Ferguson, Scottish. My mother's maiden name is Ferguson. My maiden name is McCord, which is Irish. So Irish, Scottish, and then there's some British and French. So it's kind of like both my mother's and my father's side of the family were made up of colonizer and colonized. And then seeing like the strength of these Scottish people, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm made from that stock. It's just really interesting. And then the Celtic stuff that comes in and all of the mystic stuff, like it's just fascinating to see it acted out and to imagine my ancestors living that life. And,
oh my God, totally.
So wild.
I haven't seen all of the series, but I've seen some of it. And the first episode just like, I think it just there's something, I don't have all of the same, but I have a lot of those parts in my heritage as well. And the stuff about like the epic Celtic, like the music and the landscape and the, you know, the stone circles and all of it just like does something like to my soul in a really deep way. And actually I love that you use the words colonizer and colonized, because I feel like in the ongoing exploration of, you know, race healing work, I really have resonated with like Milagros Phillips talking about, you know, connecting to the trauma of our own lineage and healing that so that we don't project it out. And then same with, I don't know, there's just like a lot of people talking about lineage. And I love the idea of ancestors, connecting to your ancestors. I know like, at Asha Frost on your podcast, and she talks about that a lot too. And like, I feel like there's something really powerful about also as white women just looking at what are my roots and what is my lineage, and how can I like, you know, kind of connect to both the trauma and darkness and shadow of that, as well as the strength of it. Yeah.
I love that about you. You are, again, everything you do is very heart-centered, that I see and that I've seen of you. And I love that you're being vulnerable as you explore this healing and your unconscious bias, just as I'm looking at that in myself, like my white privilege, the things that I just never would have thought of. And not just sitting in guilt, but like saying, okay, this happened. Now it behooves me to live differently, to be part of the healing, to allow people of color to not need to, unless they're being paid for it, educate me on it so that they can go out and create their great life, to elevate their voices. Because, you know, I've had a bit of a free ride, you know, really when it comes down to it. And certainly many people have different thoughts about that. But it's just true, right? Like it's just the truth. And if anyone has questions, please DM. I have wonderful resources to send to you. And actually, I will link Milagros Phillips below and Asha Frost as well for their teaching.
They're both amazing. And, you know, I feel like it's nuanced, and I've become a lot more sort of, I don't know, just, I guess I've become disenchanted with cancel culture in the past year.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that does not ironically cancel out my commitment to, you know, being part of this movement of collective healing. And actually another person to link, I mean, not that these people necessarily need more links, but Adrienne Maree Brown wrote this incredible essay about, I think it's called like Unspeakable Thoughts in the Age of COVID and Cancel Culture or something along those lines. And it is one of the most powerful things I've read in a long time, because so much of, I mean, people can read the whole, it's a meaty article that's well worth reading every word. But it was interesting because I noticed that I was starting to have this little intuitive feeling like something's just not quite feeling like productive about some of these conversations among women. And she kind of hit the nail on the head around it, which is that it's actually a perpetuation of like misogyny and patriarchy and white supremacy. And it's like, let's just fight with each other. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. It's not what the podcast is about.
Right. But this is so good. And this is why I love doing these like follow-up conversations. And I feel like, so are you free tomorrow? Let's talk some more. Because there's just so much goodness that can be talked about. And when we raise this stuff to the surface, and when we talk about ourselves working through it, it allows people the permission and the grace to be curious, to explore it in their own lives, and to know that, hey, no matter where you stand, you are loved, you are valuable, you are worthy, and we all are. And so let's go about it in a loving and kind way. There are wonderful ways to do that. And I think just having healthy dialogue about it is so important, because that's how we learn. Sitting in a posture of, oh, I don't know, tell me your experience, and then I can do with that what I will. And that, again, the whole creativity of just curiosity. When we approach things with curiosity, it's not scary. It's not, you can't mess up being curious. You just get curious.
Totally.
And,
I mean, so much, sorry.
No, that's, please.
I just, it's like stuff that I'm so excited about, actually. It's like, I feel to me so much can be gained from a stance of humility, you know, and like you said, a stance of, I don't know. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to not know. You know?
Absolutely. And for some reason we have this, well, I guess patriarchy has taught us, like, there has to be, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yes.
Boom, black and white. And, you know, we talked on the podcast a tiny bit about faith systems, and like my faith stems from Christianity, the Anabaptist movement of peacekeeping through Jesus. And so who was humble and lived in humility? Oh yeah, Jesus, God among us. He was humble. Okay, if we can't follow that example, if we believe that, right, then okay. You know, so it really, and the whole love others as I've loved you. Okay, well, that's impossible. But hey, what a great standard to shoot for.
Yeah.
And it takes away all of my excuses. And but I want to judge. I'd rather try and be right. Well, no, I didn't say be right. I didn't say judge. That's up to me. And oh yeah, I'm going to judge through a loving lens. Oh, right. You don't know how to do that. So
I know, or even like, I mean, honestly, even in the sort of microcosm of this conversation, I'm aware that, like, you know, me even saying like, this is how we should be coming to these conversations is a little like, really?
I know.
I mean, I think the more honest thing to say would be, I have found that when I come to conversations about these highly sensitive, charged subjects with that kind of mindset and emotional openness, it's more productive and more harmonious. And I don't always do that. When I come from a place of, you're not doing it right, like blah, 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 doesn't really work so well.
Well, then it closes us off, and we do it, and then we see it and we realize, no, I want openness. And, you know, I really believe, like, we were designed as co-creators, with God. And I feel like as a result, there's such a huge spectrum of beautiful diversity and unique qualities that all of us have. And there's a place for all of us. And when we are given the freedom to just express ourselves as who we truly are, the world benefits. And when I approach people from a stance of humility and like curiosity, the worst that happens is I've made a friend. The worst that happens, I've gotten to know someone's standpoint, and hey, I just love people. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity, but it does involve us letting go of preconceived notions and just really kind of unlearning a lot of stuff that maybe has been modeled for us in our life.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, you see me often in your stories going, yes, amen, 100%, clap, clap, clap. Yeah, because it's just so good. And there's so much good stuff floating out along the internet right now. There has been historically, especially the past 4 years, a lot of crazy stuff that's been hard to take. And yet there's always way more good. The light shines brightest in the darkness. It's true. And I'm grateful to see that. And I'm so grateful that, you shine such a beautiful light in your own beautiful, unique way. And before I let you go, although I'd love to stay on forever, but I know I have another call I want to go on with Adrienne.
Oh, great.
With your sister. The live coaching. I would love to know, please tell us what is coming up for you now? What are you opening up for people to participate in? You had alluded to it in the podcast, and now what is formed?
Well, I did allude to it, and what I alluded to is not quite hatched yet. So really the best way to, connect with me is to do a one-on-one session. That's really the best way. And to follow me on Instagram and, subscribe to my newsletter. So I do 2 kinds of sessions at this time. One is called a muse session, which is an intuitive healing and guidance session. And then one is called a soul song session, which is that with an intuitively selected song at the end, which I sing to you a cappella, and you just receive it into your heart. So it's part of the healing transmission. And so that's the primary way I'm working with people right now. And I actually am going to change my mind and do a full moon thing on IG Live on Thursday, because I haven't figured out what my new platform is to do those. But coming soon will be some sort of group thing around the moon stuff. And then also I'm super excited about this very new thing that I'm cooking up called Anchoring the Light, which is going to be a series of virtual, unless you're in Maine, virtual healing ritual concerts.
Ooh.
So I'm very excited about that, but I don't know when it's going to happen yet. So the best way to find me is at @Moller, which is right where I am. And then also I have, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website.
Lovely. Well, keep me posted, and we can, share some stuff, maybe have you on again. And maybe next time we can have you do a soul song. I didn't really plan for that specifically this time, but that would be really, really fun.
That would be great.
Ooh, maybe we could harmonize or something. But Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for spending this time with us. Thank you, everyone who joined. And please go on over to your favorite podcast player and look up Connect with Sheila Botelho, the podcast. And you will see episode 49 with myself and Anne, riffing on her life in creativity, in being a muse, in being an intuitive, all of these beautiful things, getting to know her even more. Thank you so much, and we will see you real soon.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.